The binary stars cast shifting patterns of light across the observation deck of Helios 7, painting Michael Rodriguez's face in alternating shades of crimson and gold. He pressed his hand against the transparent Durasteel viewing panel, feeling the subtle vibration of the station's gravity generators maintaining their delicate balance in space. Environmental adjustment required for human comfort, the station's AI announced in its melodic tones, implementing atmospheric modifications. Michael smiled as the air around him shifted imperceptibly to accommodate his biology. Even after 5 years aboard the most advanced medical station in the Orion Arm, these little reminders of his unique status among the staff never ceased to amaze him. While his colleagues could survive in environments ranging from methane seas to plasma storms, he remained distinctly human, and that had proven to be his greatest strength. A gentle chime from his neural interface indicated the start of his shift. The interface, unlike the full neural integrations his alien colleagues used, was a simple device that respected the natural limitations of the human brain. He'd learned early in his career that sometimes limitations could be advantages. The main medical bay doors parted with a whisper as Michael entered, revealing a scene that would have seemed impossible just a few centuries ago. A Mercurian floated in a containment field, its mercury-like form rippling with signs of distress. Beside it, a towering nexus, being composed entirely of living crystal, communicated with the medical AI through pulses of light. "Good morning, Dr. Rodriguez," the station's AI greeted him. "Your first patient is experiencing unusual fluctuations in their liquid metal matrix." Michael approached the Mercurian, whose surface rippled in recognition. While other doctors might rely solely on advanced scanning equipment, he began with something uniquely human: observation. His eyes, products of millions of years of evolution on Earth, caught subtle patterns in the Mercurian's surface tension that the AI's sensors hadn't prioritized. "The matrix destabilization isn't random," he said, watching the ripples. "It's following a rhythm." He'd spent countless hours studying Earth's oceans in preparation for treating liquid-based life forms, understanding that sometimes ancient knowledge could illuminate modern mysteries. The nexus being turned its crystalline form toward him, light patterns flickering with interest. The sensors detect no rhythmic pattern. It communicated through the translation field. Michael pulled up a holographic display, motioning with practiced ease despite lacking the neural augmentations his colleagues used. "Look at it like waves on a shore," he explained, his hands tracing the pattern. "It's not a malfunction. It's a response to something." Years of human medical training had taught him to trust his instincts. He adjusted the containment field's resonance frequency, matching it to the rhythm he'd observed. Almost immediately, the Mercurian's surface calmed, its silver surface smoothing into a healthy gleam. "Fascinating," the nexus being pulsed. "Your organic pattern recognition capabilities exceeded our quantum analysis systems." Michael checked the patient's vital signs as they stabilized. "Sometimes the simplest observation is the most important one," he said, making notes in the patient's file with quick gestures through the holographic interface. "We developed these skills watching predators and weather patterns. Turns out they're just as useful in space." As he completed the treatment, Michael caught his reflection in the Mercurian's now calm surface. He saw what his colleagues saw: a being without genetic enhancements or cybernetic improvements, relying on organic senses and natural neural processing. Yet it was precisely these limitations that allowed him to notice things others might miss. The Mercurian formed a tendril of its liquid surface into a gesture of gratitude, a movement learned from observing human handshakes. Michael returned the gesture with a smile, appreciating how each species learned from the others aboard Helios 7. "Next patient in treatment pod 3, the AI announced as Michael finished his documentation. He straightened his standard-issue medical uniform, ready for whatever the galaxy might bring next. In a station filled with beings who could bend time and phase through walls, sometimes being simply human was exactly what was needed. The emergency alert pulsed through Helios 7's neural network, with an urgency that made Michael's interface tingle at the base of his skull. He was halfway through his lunch, real Earth-grown tomatoes from the hydroponics bay, when the call came in. Priority 1 emergency in Docking Bay 7, the station's AI announced. Crystalline entity with critical molecular destabilization. All qualified medical personnel report immediately. Michael ran toward the emergency transport tube, his heart racing with purely human adrenaline. The tube's gravity fields whisked him through the station at speeds that would have nauseated his ancestors, but 5 years of space medicine had given him excellent adaptation skills. He emerged into organized chaos. A Rigelian transport vessel had docked, its crystalline hull flickering with distress patterns. Inside the quarantine field, a crystalline entity lay on the emergency platform, its usually pristine geometric form fracturing into jagged, unstable patterns. Patient is Ambassador Lyrics from the Rigel system. The medical AI reported as Michael approached. Molecular structure experiencing cascading failure. Standard stabilization protocols ineffective. 3 other medical specialists were already present. A quantum physician composed of pure energy, a biochemical expert with 4 brains, and a temporal surgeon who existed partially out of phase with normal spacetime. Their advanced diagnostic tools filled the air with holographic data streams. Core crystalline matrix failing, the quantum physician announced. Conventional reintegration patterns showing 0 effect. Michael stepped closer, his unaugmented human eyes studying the ambassador's deteriorating form. While his colleagues saw the problem through quantum scanners and probability matrices, he saw something familiar, something that reminded him of Earth. The fracture patterns, he said, moving around the platform. They're similar to what happens in Earth's geodes under extreme pressure. His mind raced back to childhood memories of breaking open rocks to find crystal formations inside. The biochemical expert's multiple brains pulsed with skepticism. This is Ascension crystalline being, Dr. Rodriguez, not a simple mineral formation. But the basic molecular principles might be similar, Michael insisted, pulling up historical geological data from Earth on a holographic display. Look at these patterns from Earth's crystal caves. The formation process requires specific conditions, pressure, temperature, and catalyst elements. The temporal surgeon phased partly into normal spacetime. The ambassador's condition is deteriorating. We have minutes at most. Michael's hands flew over the environmental controls. We need to recreate the conditions of crystal formation, but at a quantum level. Can we modify the quarantine field to create a pressure gradient? Unorthodox, the quantum physician flickered, but possible. Working together, they transformed the quarantine field into a precisely controlled environment. Michael's knowledge of Earth's natural crystal formation processes guided them in creating the perfect conditions at a quantum scale. Adding mineral catalysts from Earth's crystal caves, Michael said, selecting elements through the molecular synthesizer. Adjusted for the ambassador's unique atomic structure. The ambassador's fractured form began to stabilize, the chaotic patterns slowly resolving into their natural geometric beauty. Where the advanced healing protocols had failed, understanding of basic Earth geology had succeeded. Remarkable, the biochemical expert admitted, all 4 brains processing the data. The solution was in studying simpler natural processes rather than advanced quantum mechanics. The ambassador's consciousness reintegrated, their crystalline form pulsing with patterns of gratitude. Your approach was unexpected. They communicated through the translator field. Our own medical specialists would never have considered such a method. Michael smiled, checking the final stability readings. Sometimes the best solutions come from looking at the fundamentals. Earth might be a young planet, but it has 4 billion years of experience in building crystals. As the emergency team dispersed and the ambassador was moved to recovery, Michael made his final notes. He knew his solution would be studied and debated by medical experts across the galaxy. Not bad for a doctor who still occasionally got lost in the station's non-Euclidean corridors. His neural interface chimed again, another patient waiting. In a galaxy full of impossible problems, sometimes the answer lay in remembering where you came from. The grand symposium chamber aboard Helios 7 sparkled with bioluminescent light from 1,000 different species. Michael adjusted the collar of his formal medical uniform, watching in amazement as beings of pure energy danced with crystalline entities in a display of interstellar unity. His recent success with Ambassador Lyrics had earned him an invitation to this prestigious gathering, though he hadn't expected quite such an elaborate celebration. Dr. Rodriguez, a melodic voice chimed in his neural interface. The Lumini delegation requests your presence. He made his way through the crowd to where three beings of pure light hovered, their forms shifting through colors humans had no names for. The neural interface translated their photonic language into something his brain could process. We observed your innovative treatment of the crystalline ambassador. The eldest Lumini pulsed, their light patterns forming complex geometric shapes. Most intriguing to see such primitive knowledge yield advanced results. Michael had learned that primitive was often used as a term of fascination rather than dismissal in galactic society. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones, he replied, using hand gestures that the Lumini found particularly expressive. Earth's natural processes have had billions of years to perfect themselves. A group of Chronos beings phased into existence nearby, their forms shifting between past and future states. They existed in multiple time streams simultaneously, making conversation with them a unique challenge that Michael had come to enjoy. Your treatment will save / has saved / is saving many crystalline beings, one of them commented, their words echoing through multiple temporal states. We see its effects rippling through several potential timelines. The gathering shifted as Ambassador Lyrics approached, their crystalline form now restored to its full geometric perfection. The ambassador's arrival drew attention from across the chamber. It wasn't often that a patient attended the same symposium as their doctor. Perhaps Dr. Rodriguez would share more of Earth's primitive wisdom, the ambassador suggested, their crystalline facets refracting the Lumini's light into spectacular patterns. We find humans' ability to draw connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena fascinating. Michael found himself at the center of an impromptu lecture describing how Earth's diverse environments had shaped human problem-solving abilities. He explained how watching waves on a beach helped understand fluid dynamics, how studying cave formations led to understanding crystal growth, and how observing weather patterns developed pattern recognition skills that even quantum computers couldn't replicate. A nexus being joined the discussion, their neural networks processing information in ways that made standard AIs look simple. Your species developed these skills through survival necessity, they observed. While we evolved in controlled environments, humans adapted to constant change. That's exactly it, Michael agreed, warming to the topic. Earth throws new challenges at us constantly. We had to become adaptable to survive. He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's varied ecosystems. Every environment taught us different lessons. The Lumini pulsed with interest, their light patterns synchronizing with his gestures. Show us how you observe patterns, they requested. We wish to understand this organic process. Michael guided the gathered beings through a simple Earth meditation technique, teaching them to quiet their advanced sensors and rely on basic observation. The chamber filled with a remarkable sight. Beings of light, crystal, and energy, all practicing human mindfulness. Remarkable, Ambassador Lyrics commented. Your species has developed sophisticated philosophical tools alongside your scientific understanding. As the symposium continued, Michael found himself moving easily between different groups, bridging gaps between species that normally had trouble communicating. His human adaptability allowed him to adjust his behavior and communication style for each species, something his more specialized colleagues found challenging. The station's AI chimed softly in his neural interface. Dr. Rodriguez, you have achieved something unprecedented. This is the longest period of sustained interspecies communication in the symposium's history. Michael smiled, watching the gathered beings continue their discussions. In a galaxy of specialists, perhaps humanity's greatest strength was being a generalist, able to see connections that others missed and build bridges between different ways of thinking. Michael frowned at the holographic patient records floating before him in his office. Something wasn't quite right. He'd noticed it first 3 days ago, subtle variations in treatment outcomes that didn't match the station's predictive models. Most of his colleagues dismissed his concerns, trusting in the quantum computer's analysis that showed all results within acceptable parameters. "Computer, show me recovery rates for all species treated in the past month," he requested, pushing away his half-finished cup of replicated coffee. The neural interface responded instantly, filling the air with streams of data. "Recovery rates are within standard deviation," the station's AI reported. "No significant anomalies detected." But human instinct, that peculiar combination of pattern recognition and gut feeling that had served their species for millennia, told him otherwise. He stood up and walked to the viewing window, watching the binary stars dance their eternal orbital ballet. "Show me environmental data for all treatment rooms," he said suddenly, remembering how his grandmother used to predict storms by watching bird behavior. "Compare it with patient vital signs during recovery periods." The data streams shifted, reorganizing themselves into new patterns. To the quantum computers, each data point was an isolated factor to be analyzed independently. But to human eyes that had evolved watching for predators in the shadows of ancient savannas, patterns emerged from seeming chaos. "There," he muttered, reaching out to touch one particular data cluster. "Computer, magnify this section." The hologram expanded, showing subtle variations in atmospheric composition during different treatment cycles. Most species required specific environmental conditions for optimal recovery, and the station automatically adjusted each treatment room accordingly. Cross-reference these atmospheric variations with the recovery rate anomalies, Michael instructed, his mind racing. The data streams merged, and suddenly the pattern became clear, like seeing shapes in clouds or faces in tree bark. He tapped his neural interface. "Dr. Rodriguez to Medical Bay 1. Is anyone else seeing this?" The quantum physician's energy form flickered into view through the holographic display. "Seeing what, doctor?" "Our analysis shows no significant correlations." "Look at the atmospheric mixing patterns," Michael explained, highlighting specific data points. "When we treat multiple species in adjacent rooms, their environmental requirements are creating unexpected interactions. The air filtration systems are working perfectly, but they're generating trace elements we never accounted for." The quantum physician's energy field pulsed with surprise. "Impossible. The systems are completely isolated." "Not quite," Michael smiled, remembering lessons from Earth's ecosystem studies. Just like how Earth's forests create microenvironments that affect neighboring areas, our treatment rooms are influencing each other in subtle ways. The effects are too small for any single sensor to flag, but they're adding up. He expanded the display, showing hundreds of tiny interactions between treatment rooms. "See these patterns? They're like weather systems, creating microscopic atmospheric changes that our equipment registers as normal variation. But for some species, even these tiny changes can affect recovery times." The temporal surgeon phased into the office, their form shifting between time states. "We're detecting similar patterns across multiple temporal wavelengths," they confirmed. "The effect is subtle enough to escape standard observation protocols." More medical staff joined the discussion as Michael explained his discovery. The station's quantum computers had missed these interactions because they were programmed to look for specific types of problems. But human intuition, shaped by millions of years of evolution, was designed to spot exactly these kinds of subtle environmental changes. "We'll need to recalibrate all environmental systems," the quantum physician concluded. "Dr. Rodriguez, would you assist in developing new protocols? Your organic perspective might help us account for these interactions." Michael nodded, already thinking of ways to apply Earth's ecological principles to the station's environmental systems. In a galaxy of hyper-specialized technology, Sometimes the most valuable tool was a human's ability to see the bigger picture. His neural interface chimed with another alert. More patient data showing the same subtle patterns. There was work to be done, and mysteries yet to unravel. Just another day in the life of a human doctor among the stars. The emergency alarms pulsed through Helios 7 with an intensity Michael hadn't seen since his first year on the station. Treatment rooms that normally hummed with quiet efficiency now blazed with warning lights as patients from multiple species reported unprecedented symptoms. 17 new cases in the past hour, the station's AI reported as Michael rushed through the corridors. Standard treatment protocols showing minimal effectiveness. Species affected: Lumini, crystalline entities, nexus beings, and temporal residents. Michael entered Medical Bay 3 to find chaos. Lumini's light patterns were destabilizing, flickering between wavelengths that made his neural interface crackle. Nearby, a crystalline entity's geometric structure showed signs of the same molecular destabilization he treated in Ambassador Lyrics, but this time the Earth-based solution wasn't working. All quantum analysis systems are running at maximum capacity, the quantum physician announced, their energy form intensifying with concern. No common factor identified between affected species. Michael's mind raced back to humanity's history of epidemics. Computer, show me patient distribution throughout the station. A three-dimensional map materialized, highlighting affected areas in red. The pattern, he murmured, seeing something familiar. It's moving like an earth-water system. He remembered studying ancient plagues in medical school, how they followed trade routes and water systems. The temporal surgeon phased into view, their form unusually stable as they focused on the present crisis. The quantum computers cannot process the variables quickly enough. Too many species, too many environmental factors. Because they're looking at it wrong, Michael said, his hands dancing through the holographic display. We're not dealing with isolated cases. We're seeing an ecosystem in crisis. He highlighted the environmental interaction patterns he'd discovered earlier. These atmospheric variations we found, they're not just affecting recovery rates anymore, they're creating a cascade effect. He pulled up historical data from Earth's environmental disasters. Look at this pattern from the Great Smog of London in 1952. Different elements, but the same principle. Multiple factors combining to create something worse than the sum of its parts. The biochemical expert's four brains pulsed with rapid calculations. The atmospheric interactions are exponential. Each new patient's environmental requirements are amplifying the effect. Michael nodded, remembering lessons from Earth's pandemic responses. We need to think like our ancestors did before they had advanced technology. First step, containment. Not just of patients, but of their environmental requirements. His fingers flew over the control panels, implementing emergency protocols based on centuries-old quarantine procedures. Create buffer zones between different atmospheric requirements, like fire breaks in a forest fire. The quantum computers didn't predict this solution, the quantum physician observed, their energy field fluctuating with surprise. That's because they're designed to solve problems with precise, targeted solutions, Michael explained, watching as the new protocols began to take effect. But sometimes you need to step back and look at the whole system. Earth taught us that lesson through countless disasters. The station's AI processed the new data. Environmental contamination rates decreasing. Atmospheric interaction cascade showing signs of stabilization. But Michael knew this was just the beginning. He turned to address the gathered medical team, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's long experience with crisis management. We've bought ourselves time, but we need to understand how these interactions started. Earth's history shows us that treating symptoms isn't enough. We need to find the root cause. The Lumini patient's light patterns steadied as the new containment protocols took effect. Across the medical bay, other patients began showing signs of improvement. The temporal surgeon's form flickered as they scanned potential futures. The timelines are stabilizing. Your solution is working. Michael watched the holographic display as the red warning areas slowly began to recede. Humanity might be young compared to many galactic species, but they had learned harsh lessons about handling complex crises. Sometimes the best solutions came not from advanced technology, but from remembering how to survive when technology wasn't enough. His neural interface chimed with updates from across the station. The crisis wasn't over, but they had a fighting chance now. As he prepared to coordinate the next phase of their response, Michael smiled grimly. Earth had trained its children well for moments like these. Michael stood in the center of the emergency command hub, surrounded by the station's brightest minds. Holographic displays filled the air with cascading data streams, each representing a different aspect of the crisis. The containment protocols had bought them time, but they needed a permanent solution. The quantum simulations suggest 17 possible treatment approaches. The quantum physician reported their energy form pulsing with rapid calculations, but none achieve more than 60% effectiveness across all affected species. The temporal surgeon phased between time states, their form blurring as they analyzed potential futures. Multiple timelines show continued spread despite containment. We need something more comprehensive. Michael studied the data streams, his unaugmented human eyes seeing patterns that reminded him of something from Earth's history. Computer, show me the atmospheric interaction patterns again, but this time overlay them with patient recovery rates. The display shifted, creating a complex web of interconnected data points. To most observers, it would appear chaotic, but to eyes that had evolved watching weather patterns and predator movements, a pattern emerged. Look at this, he said, highlighting a particular sequence. It's like a coral reef ecosystem. Each species affects the environment, which then affects other species. We're not seeing isolated problems. We're seeing a new type of environmental system forming spontaneously. The biochemical expert's four brains pulsed with sudden understanding. Like your Earth's symbiotic relationships. Exactly, Michael replied, excitement building in his voice. We've been trying to treat each species in isolation, but what if that's the wrong approach? What if we need to work with these interactions instead of against them? He pulled up historical data from Earth's environmental restoration projects. Look at how we restored damaged ecosystems. Instead of forcing them back to their original state, we helped them find a new balance. The Lumini delegates' light patterns shifted with interest. You suggest we allow these atmospheric interactions to continue. Not unchecked, Michael explained, manipulating the holographic display. But controlled, guided. Like how Earth's forests maintain different layers of canopy, each supporting the others. The quantum physician's energy field flickered with skepticism. The computational requirements would be enormous. Even our quantum systems would struggle to maintain such complex balances. Michael smiled, remembering lessons from Earth's history of space exploration. Then we don't rely solely on computers. We create a hybrid system, combining quantum computing with biological monitoring. Like how early space stations used both mechanical and biological systems to maintain their environments. The temporal surgeon's form stabilized as they focused on this new possibility. A fusion of approaches unprecedented in galactic medical history. But not in Earth's history, Michael pointed out. We've been combining different approaches to solve problems since our species began. It's how we survived on a planet that constantly tried to kill us. Working together, they began developing a new environmental control system. The quantum computers would handle the precise adjustments, while biological sensors, based on Earth's most sensitive organisms, would monitor the overall system health. The Lumini contributed their understanding of light-based healing, while the crystalline entities shared their knowledge of molecular harmonics. Hour by hour, the new system took shape. In treatment rooms across the station, patients began showing signs of genuine recovery as their environments shifted into a carefully maintained balance. Recovery rates exceeding 80%, the station's AI reported. New environmental stability protocols holding. Michael watched as the warning indicators across the station gradually shifted from red to green. The crisis wasn't over, but they had found a path forward, not by forcing the problem to conform to their expectations, but by adapting their approach to work with the complexity rather than against it. The quantum physician's energy form pulsed with what Michael had learned to recognize as respect. Your Earth's history contains more wisdom than we initially understood. We learned the hard way, Michael replied, thinking of all the challenges that had shaped his species. But those lessons made us who we are. In a galaxy of specialists, maybe humanity's greatest strength is remembering that everything is connected. The Galactic Medical Council chamber stretched high above in sweeping curves of light and energy, designed to accommodate beings of all forms and dimensions. Michael stood at the presentation podium, his neural interface projecting the results of Helios 7's breakthrough to the assembled delegates. As you can see, he explained, gesturing to the holographic display, the solution came not from advanced technology alone, but from understanding fundamental principles of ecological balance. The display showed the intricate dance of atmospheric interactions, now controlled and beneficial rather than chaotic. A council member composed of pure thought energy pulsed with curiosity. Your approach defies conventional medical wisdom. It suggests that more advanced solutions are not always better solutions. Michael nodded, thinking of Earth's long history of innovation through necessity. Sometimes the most elegant solutions come from understanding basic principles. Earth's ecosystems spent billions of years developing these balanced systems. We just had to learn to listen. The holographic display shifted to show patient recovery data. The results were undeniable. Recovery rates had improved across all species, and the new environmental systems were more stable than their predecessors. Your species' experience with planetary-scale disasters has proven unexpectedly valuable, noted another council member, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns of approval. Perhaps we have overlooked the advantages of evolving on a challenging world. The quantum physician who had worked with Michael stepped forward, their energy form synchronized with the chamber's ambient light. Dr. Rodriguez's insights led us to develop a hybrid approach that none of us would have considered. The combination of quantum computing and biological monitoring has applications far beyond this single crisis. Michael brought up new data showing how the principles they developed were being adapted for use in other medical stations across the galaxy. The key was understanding that complexity doesn't always require complex solutions. Sometimes it requires stepping back and seeing the bigger picture. A temporal delegate phased into view, their form rippling with multiple possible futures. We see this approach creating positive cascades through numerous potential timelines. The implications for galactic medicine are significant. The council chamber hummed with discussion as representatives from across the galaxy processed the implications. Michael watched as beings of light, energy, crystal, and stranger forms debated the merits of incorporating Earth-inspired approaches into their medical practices. There is another aspect we must consider, the council leader announced, their form shifting through dimensions Michael's human eyes couldn't quite process. This crisis has demonstrated the value of maintaining connections to more traditional knowledge alongside our advanced technologies. Michael thought of his grandmother's weather predictions, of ancient healers who understood herb interactions, of early space pioneers who combined mechanical and biological systems. Every civilization's path holds valuable lessons, he said. The trick is knowing when to apply them. The holographic display showed a new simulation, the spread of hybrid medical systems across the galaxy, each adapted to local conditions but maintaining the core principle of balanced interaction. It was like watching the spread of life across Earth's ancient oceans, each adaptation building on what came before. The Galactic Medical Council recognizes the significance of this contribution, the council leader declared. We hereby establish a new division dedicated to studying and implementing these hybrid approaches. Dr. Rodriguez, we request your assistance in developing the training protocols. Michael felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just recognition of his work, it was validation of humanity's unique perspective. Their primitive planet had taught them lessons that even the most advanced civilizations found valuable. I would be honored, he replied, already thinking of ways to combine the best of Earth's wisdom with galactic technology. But I suggest we make this a truly collaborative effort, drawing on the strengths of all our peoples. The chamber filled with signals of agreement, 1,000 different species expressing approval in their own unique ways. In the vast tapestry of galactic civilization, humanity had found its thread, not by trying to match the advanced technology of older species, but by offering something different, a perspective shaped by surviving on a world that never stopped challenging them. The familiar dance of binary stars cast ever-changing patterns through the observation deck's viewing panel, but Michael saw them differently now. 6 months had passed since the crisis, and Helios 7 had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic medicine, a place where ancient wisdom and advanced technology worked in perfect harmony. Training Session 17 beginning in Medical Bay 4, the station's AI announced through his neural interface. Below, a group of medical practitioners from across the galaxy gathered for another lesson in what they dubbed terrestrial intuitive medicine. Michael smiled as he made his way down to the medical bay. Today's class included beings of pure energy, crystalline entities, and even a group of temporal residents who existed in multiple time states. All that come to learn what humanity's primitive world could teach them. Today we're discussing pattern recognition, he began, activating the holographic display. But first, I want you to turn off your quantum sensors and advanced scanning systems. We're going to rely on organic observation. A ripple of uncertainty passed through the gathered beings. A young quantum physician's energy form flickered with confusion. How can we diagnose without our standard tools? The same way humans did for thousands of years, Michael explained, bringing up images of Earth's varying environments. By learning to see connections, every environment on Earth taught us different ways of observing, different patterns to recognize. He guided them through exercises based on ancient human practices, watching weather patterns, tracking animal movements, observing plant growth cycles. The temporal residents found it particularly challenging to focus on a single time state, but that was part of the lesson. Your advanced technology is invaluable, Michael continued, showing them medical scans from recent patients. But understanding these basic patterns gives you another layer of insight. Sometimes, the simplest observation reveals what the most advanced sensor misses. The training session moved to practical applications, with each being learning to combine their natural abilities with human observational techniques. The quantum physician who had doubted the method earlier now managed to diagnose a subtle environmental imbalance without using any advanced sensors. Remarkable, they posed. The pattern was there all along, but our reliance on quantum analysis made us blind to it. Later in his office, Michael reviewed the latest data from medical stations across the galaxy that had implemented the hybrid approach. Recovery rates were up, treatment complications were down, and most importantly, different species were learning to work together in new ways. His neural interface chimed with an incoming message from the Galactic Medical Council. More stations were requesting training programs, and new applications for the hybrid approach were being discovered daily. What had started as a crisis response had evolved into a revolution in galactic medicine. Ambassador Lyrics phased into the office, their crystalline form refracting the starlight. The Council's latest reports are most encouraging, they said. Your Earth's principles are being adapted for use in everything from space station design to interstellar navigation. Michael nodded, thinking of how far they'd come. Earth taught us that the best solutions often come from understanding basic principles. Technology is incredible, but it's the understanding that matters most. The ambassador's crystalline form shifted, and what Michael had learned was their equivalent of a smile. You've shown us that being young isn't always a disadvantage. Sometimes fresh eyes see what ancient wisdom misses. Together, they watched through the office viewport as a medical transport arrived, bringing new students from across the galaxy. Each would learn to combine their advanced capabilities with the fundamental insights Earth had taught humanity. Computer began recording daily log, Michael said, still watching the transport dock. Another day on Helios 7, where the newest and oldest methods of healing work together. Earth's lessons continue to prove their worth among the stars. We're not just teaching technique, we're showing that every civilization's path holds value. That strength comes in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest wisdom lies in remembering where you came from. The binary stars continued their eternal dance outside, but now they seemed to shine with new meaning, a reminder that in the vast galaxy, every light had its purpose, every perspective its value. Humanity had found its role not by trying to match the advanced ages of other species, but by showing how much a young, challenging world could teach those who were willing to learn.